What is going on, Internet? Lou here, and today I'm going to be bringing you guys my thoughts and opinions on Linux Mint 12 codename Lisa. This is the final release. As many of you know, I've already done an RC review, but that RC review was a VirtualBox install, and I wanted to really give a fair review to Linux Mint 12 because I've always been a big fan of the Linux Mint project, and so I went ahead and installed it natively on my hardware. Again, for those of you who didn't see my last video, I also did this because I feel as though I've gotten a lot of messages from you guys asking me questions on not necessarily my tutorials, but on Fedora as an operating system, how to get certain things accomplished. And I found that, although for me Fedora felt very comfortable, it was somewhat of a stumbling block for a lot of you guys, and to try to help you guys as much as possible, I'm now running Linux Mint, which is obviously an Ubuntu-based distribution, full-time. So when I do my tutorials, chances are I'm probably going to be using a distribution that most of you are using. So if you're using any Ubuntu derivative distribution, or even Ubuntu 11.10 or Mint, everything will be exactly the same. So hopefully that'll help you guys out even more. So today, again, it's not going to be your average distro review. I'm not going to walk you through installing Linux Mint 12 and what the default wallpaper is and default applications. And what I like to do is give you a distro review from the user's perspective, from a power user's perspective. And I think that's really important because Linux Mint is normally given a lot of credit for really being geared toward that brand new Linux user. Now I'm very comfortable in Linux. I would consider myself a power user. So how does Linux Mint 12 stack up to the everyday tasks that a power user needs to be able to do? Now that's kind of the perspective I want to go into this video with. So if you're a new Linux user or a power user, does Linux Mint 12 stand up to the hype? That's what we're going to be taking a look at. Also, I'll run through all the customizations I've done in Linux Mint 12. So for those of you, maybe you may be in the same situation I was. You tried out the RC and said, I don't like certain things. And again, it's not because it didn't work. It's not an issue of functionality. Maybe it was just an issue of preference. But again, we're Linux users. And what does that mean? That we have options. Okay, so I'll show you how I tweaked my desktop aesthetically to see, hey, look, this is what a finished, refined, tweaked desktop could look like. And we'll get into some of the, underlying guts in Linux Mint 12 and see what they really did to the distribution to make it different from all the rest. So let's get right into it. Obviously you guys can see here from the actual theme, I've got my nice tilt shift wallpaper here, very minty, and you notice that I'm not using the standard Linux Mint theme. Now, for those of you who didn't know, Linux Mint did not come up with that theme on their own. This is actually a theme that you can find on GnomeLook or even on DeviantArt. I'm going to butcher this name, so bear with me. Zakito, something like that. It's if you go to GTK3 themes and sort by the most downloaded, this is going to be the one right here at the top. So, honestly, when Mint chose this particular theme, there's also a shell theme that goes along with this. They picked one that made sense, the one that most people liked. Okay, I personally, from a lot of the reviews that I've read, even the people who don't like GNOME Shell really said they love the aesthetic of GNOME Shell. I really don't think they needed to mess with it. If they wanted to make it a little bit more minty-ish, I guess, they could have gone with an alternate theme. Now, admittedly, this particular theme has a lot of Mint-esque features, and by that I mean it has a lot of grays, it has a lot of really light transparencies. For instance, the top panel here is a light grayish transparent color. One of the things I don't like is, again, I think this goes to the issue of cohesiveness. When you clicked some of these menus here, they were still black. Some of the dialog menus that would pop up for different tasks throughout the system were also a translucent black. It just didn't provide a very cohesive experience. I think, again, in going by DistroWatch, I know that DistroWatch isn't really the best benchmark to gauge on what the most popular Linux distribution is. I know all the arguments behind it, but admittedly, honestly, it's really the best tool that we have to even come close to give us kind of a general idea of the most popular distro. So with all that out of the way, according to Distro Watch, Mint is number one. If you're going to be number one, you got to pay attention to the small little details, and that really goes into the whole cohesive user experience that I always talk about so much. Now, again, and then this is the same by default with the default theme. You see these in these little switches over here. You've got the blue. You'll notice that in the standard Mint theme, a lot of the highlighting and things of that nature is all green. Again, it's little tiny things. I know to a lot of people it doesn't matter, but if you buy a commercial product, right? If you buy, for instance, you buy a Mac and you go into OS 10 and you see things like that, you're going to be like, these guys didn't really pay much attention. And I know it's not a commercial product, but they're really kind of putting themselves out there to be a desktop that people can use as a daily driver. So little things, little refinements like that, I think go a long way. And I know just like in their GNOME 2 desktops, every iteration of Mint 12, things got better and better, and I'm sure it's going to be that way here too. So hopefully they pay attention to the little details like that. But so that's the theme that's installed by default. Also, well, actually, you know what? We'll get into that in a minute. So, I changed it back here to the default GNOME shell theme, which I think is very nice. I'm going to open up GNOME Tweak Tool, and I'll show you some of the different things that I did here in GNOME Tweak Tool, starting with the desktop feature. I have the file manager handle the desktop. Now, as someone who used to keep certain folders on the desktop and files and things of that nature, when I switched over to GNOME Shell, and by default it really doesn't have the file manager handle the desktop, so you can't put anything on the desktop. It's completely clean. And for all intents and purposes too, your desktop is just another directory in your system. It was just giving you kind of easy shortcuts and that they displayed right there in front of you. What I found was that my desktop became cluttered quite often, and it really took away from the focus of whatever application I was currently using. So I think the ideology and the philosophy behind GNOME Shell really comes through once you start using it quite a bit, because I just feel weird now having anything on the desktop. Things are much more organized now that I have things within specific directories, and I'm much more productive this way. So the only thing I really like to have on my desktop is any mounted volumes. Now I have a few different external hard drives. My Western Digital is the one that I use mainly, and I have that here on the desktop just for some easy access, but that's usually the only icon I have there. Now under fonts, okay, and coming from Fedora 16, I noticed a big difference here. When I installed Mint 12 and I got a big 24-inch monitor, I noticed that this title bar seemed kind of big, and also, the fonts in there seemed abnormally large, and these menus seemed huge. And it definitely was a different experience from Fedora 16. And so when I was playing around with this text scaling here, and on both Fedora 16 and here on Mint 12, it's defaulted to 1.0. When I switched it down here on Mint 12 to 0.9, it obviously decreased the size of the top panel because it decreased the size of the font. But what it went ahead and did as well is it decreased the size of these dialogues that pop up. They were obnoxiously large before. Now it's the size they feel like they should be. Things are a lot crisper. They look a lot cleaner. They don't look as kind of huge and awkward. So I definitely recommend if you want to add a little bit more refinement to your desktop and kind of reduce the size of those big awkward menus, change the text scaling down here to 0.9. Again, one of those things that it would be really nice to do kind of out of the box by default. Under Shell, I have the show date in the clock here. And I also have, under arrangement of buttons on the title bar, I have close only. Another one of the things that GNOME Shell really got a lot of flack on is no minimize or maximize features. You can enable these, and in decomp settings, before GNOME Tweak Tool came out, you could actually edit the decomp setting previously, but I really like just the close only option here. I think it's more streamlined. It's much nicer. I don't ever run anything maximized in Linux. I just never run a maximized application. I find that I'm doing a lot of things at once, and I like having things within their own window and not taking up my whole screen. So I actually have here under the Windows setting the action on title bar double click. I have it set to minimize. So if I want to minimize something, I just double click it with my mouse. Now again, GNOME Shell also functions as a nice touch interface. So if you're on a tablet or if you're on a touch screen, you can simply just double tap on the window title bar and it will close an application, as opposed to having to find a little button in the corner of the window to press with your finger. That also makes it very nice. So I think it's comfortable as a mouse user here on a desktop. It would also be comfortable if you're on a tablet or on a touch device. Okay, so that's what I have there. I have it set up for close only. Now under shell extensions. This is where Mint 12 offers a very customized GNOME Shell experience. As you can see, I toggled most of them off, and that's okay. You know, if you don't like the default Linux Mint 12, a lot of these extensions that they offer, the nice thing about GNOME Shell, and you're going to see this, I've been preaching this from the beginning, you're going to see this as we go down the line more and more and more, that with GNOME Shell, you can simply toggle features on and off. Now, one of my big criticisms is I wish a distro would just include this functionality. And you know, when you go into system settings, even pull up system settings and have these features all built into system settings. You know, the fact that you have to use a third-party application to tweak this stuff drives me nuts. I mean, just like in Ubuntu 11.10 with Unity, I mean, to really tweak Unity at all, you've got to install CCSM. Crazy. Have it installed by default. I mean, that's how you really get to the settings of your main interface. Why would you have a third-party application handling it, number one? And if it's going to be handled, you know, have it installed by default. And to Linux Mint's credit, at least they have this GNOME Tweak tool installed by default. But please, one of these GNOME Shell distros, and try to incorporate these settings into the system settings by default. That'll just, you know, add way more functionality. And I hate the idea of having to use a third-party tool to really get access to some of the core settings of the system. I just, you know, that's kind of really come across struck a nerve with me, I guess you could say, from the very beginning of using GNOME Shell. But nonetheless, Linux Mint included this tool by default. They have all these extensions installed by default, so you don't have to go and do that. I've toggled them all off except for the media player extension. For those of you who've watched my other video on GNOME Shell extensions, you know that I love this. Puts this nice little icon up here, very reminiscent of the GNOME 2 media applet that existed. You can just click on this applet, brings you down a nice little menu here to control your music, gives you some nice cover art, and be able to adjust the volume right there. Love this, very slick. I really think this should be included in GNOME Shell by default. It seems like some really core functionality. I think everybody from your average user to your super geek listens to music on their computer nowadays. So to be able to integrate that you know, feature right into the actual shell, I think would be really nice. I also have the this particular extension here. I'd never accessed the universal settings whatsoever. I just don't use them. So I cleaned that up a little bit and removed that icon. And the shutdown extension, which provides a shutdown option here by default, as opposed to the standard GNOME Shell experience, which you have to press and hold your Alt key on your keyboard, which would then reveal a power off option. This does it by default. Really nice. A little convenience again, but it's one of those little attentions to detail that I really think enhances that overall user experience. Really, really like that. So I've got that option ticked right there. So we've got that extension in use. As far as the theme is concerned, again, I don't have the shell theme extension enabled. I like the standard theme. Cursor themes Adwaita. We've got the icon theme is Mint X Dark. As you can see here, these are the Mint icons. They've always looked very nice. There's a mixture of Fianza icons and some other custom ones. I really like the look of the Mint folders. Again, very minty. I like that quite a bit. So I left those there just like that. The GTK theme is Mint Z. Really like what Mint Z brings. As you can tell here, these scroll bars, the standard Adwaita theme, they have these kind of thick blue scroll bars, kind of ugly looking. Also, Mint Z adds a little bit more of a grayish color here to the windows, which is very nice. Adwaita is very, very light gray, almost white. And Adwaita also has a huge, especially here in, well, actually, if you go and open up a Nautilus window, there's a huge space here that's just completely unused and looks very awkward. Mint Z takes care of removing that space and adds a very nice minty gray color here. And by minty gray, I don't mean greenish gray. I mean, Mint's kind of known for using these grays in their theme, and so that adds that nice color there. Looks very nice, very refined. Like that a lot. So Mint Z is the GTK theme, and the window theme is Edweda. I like that. I like believe it or not, I like these little gray buttons up top there. A lot of people don't like them. I think they're nice. I like those. And then under Windows, I have it set to minimize. Once again, I showed you guys that feature before. So those are all the little tweaks I've done. As far as applications, I went ahead and I removed gthumb, I removed Pigeon, and I removed, what else? Gthumb, I removed Pigeon. Let's see. One other application. I really only removed 3 applications. I know a lot of people love Pigeon and they hate Empathy. I like the desktop sharing feature in Empathy better, and I like the interface in Empathy a little bit better than Pigeon as well. So I installed Empathy. I just go through here. I'll show you some of the applications. Arista Transcoder. I installed Audacity. I installed Blender. GNOME Contacts. I'm not sure why this wasn't included by default. I mean, it really ties in to their online account feature here. Very nice. I love the GNOME Contacts application. I really think it should be included by default, so I went ahead and installed that. Let's see. Dropbox I installed. Once again, I installed Empathy. I installed all the extra plugins for GIMP that I normally use. Gparted, GUVC View. Let's see. Main menu, if I want to create custom launchers or customize any of these icons. Meld, which is a graphical diff tool. I installed that. Minitube, OpenShot Video Editor. I installed that. Let's see here. Again, I installed, took out gthumb and installed Shotwell. I also installed ScreenKey. This is the tool that I use to display my keystrokes on screen while I do my screencasting. Sound Converter I installed. Let's see here. Trimage is a image compressor. When I'm working with Android ROMs, I like to optimize all of the images by compressing them. And that's about it. So as far as applications, those are a lot of the graphical user interface applications that I have. I have a lot of command line tools that I also use that you cannot see. But that's what I installed for apps. Now, Mint is also known for some of their custom applications, one of which is their written from scratch update manager, which you've seen in some of their other releases. This is the most up-to-date version of the update manager that they have. Offers a nice little description feature down here at the bottom. Also a nice change log. This is the 4.3.6 update manager. I like that a lot. There's also a Mint's custom backup tool. Now, as far as out-of-the-box functionality, Mint, as usual, if you choose the DVD install, they have one specifically with codecs and one without. If you choose the one with codecs, you're going to get Flash installed out of the box. You're going to get all your MP3 support out of the box, the ability to watch DVDs and navigate through DVD menus out of the box. You'll get all of that, all of those codecs really installed, so you'll be up and running in a very short amount of time. Ubuntu 11.10 by default lets you install those codecs, and during installation they don't come included on the CD, but they give you a feature where you can install them during installation. With Mint, they'll include it on the DVD right out of the box, which is pretty nice. Let's see here. Of course, Mint also includes their Mate desktop in Linux Mint 12 for those people that prefer the GNOME 2 experience. They've got their Mate desktop installed. Honestly, I'm never going to use Mate. I really like the GNOME Shell and standard GNOME 3 experience. I know Mate's a little buggy right now anyway. I'm never going to use it, so I uninstalled the entire Mate desktop out of Mint 12. I also uninstalled all of Compiz because GNOME Shell uses Mutter. Don't need Compiz. Anything that I don't need on my system, I took out. Okay, so we got rid of Mate. Excuse me, let's see here. If you go over here to the GNOME 3 and MGSC features, they're going to go into telling you, some of the main features are, there's a bottom panel, a new application menu, new window lists, a task-centric desktop, visible system tray icons. They've got this new MGSE menu. Okay, they got a few different themes for that. They go into here talking about Mate. There's some artwork improvements that they've done. Let's see here. Yep, they actually, you know what, I never saw this before. They tell you that they based the theme off of this specific Zakito theme here. And they go in here and they show you how that you can customize this theme here a little bit, which is pretty nice. I like that. They talk about DuckDuckGo up here. By default, I have Google, but they partnered with DuckDuckGo, which is a custom search engine, and they don't have it installed by default, but you can just go down here to where it says Manage Search Engines, and then Get More Search Engines, and be able to, install any of these other engines, which Google is one of them. I went ahead and did that since I am a Google user. Okay, so they've got DuckDuckGo as their custom search engine. And of course, they're including all these upstream components, which is Ubuntu 11.10, Linux 3.0 kernel, and GNOME 3.2. They are using also LightDM as their login manager, which is a lot, compared to GDM, it's very, very slim. Supposed to increase the boot speed, and it's just lighter than GDM. I actually really like the new GDM look. Fedora 16's using it, but to each his own. LightDM's okay. It's just a login manager anyway, no big deal. And that's some of the Linux Mint 12 kind of underneath the hood features. It comes with all of the enhancements that Ubuntu 11.10 does, under the hood, and of course, all of the Mint tweaks on top of that. So, as a power user, I find it a very comfortable desktop to use. The Ubuntu repos are filled with high quality software. The ability to be able to use PPAs, which honestly I think is one of Ubuntu's biggest strengths. I don't know why people don't talk about it more. Being able to use PPAs is amazing. Oftentimes, a lot of developers will keep their bleeding edge software up on a PPA that you can install within Ubuntu and add it to your source list and have the most bleeding edge version of whatever piece of software that you like. Blender's got a nice PPA. Kdenlive has a nice PPA. You can really stay on the bleeding edge of software if you're that type of person that likes that sort of thing. Using PPAs, it's a very nice feature. I wish more distributions use something like that, incorporated PPAs. Ubuntu's got, I'm fairly certain, the most packages in their repos of any distribution. Now, Arch I know has quite a few if you include the AUR, but Ubuntu's got a ton of really high quality software. Again, if a commercial company or a developer is really going to develop for Linux as a platform, they're really going to target Ubuntu or an Ubuntu derivative, because honestly, it's the most widely used Linux distribution out there. So obviously they're going to want to get kind of exposure to the most Linux users as possible, and for that they're probably going to go with Ubuntu. So you have that benefit if you're using an Ubuntu derivative like Mint. You have access to all that really great Ubuntu software. So for me as a GNOME Shell fan and as someone who does enjoy a lot of the core features of Ubuntu, Linux Mint 12 seems to be the perfect combination. After I spent some time tweaking it to what you see here, I think it's nearly perfect in what I'm looking for in a desktop right now, and it's a really, really good beginner distro. And also, if you're a power user, I think you're going to find that Linux Mint is versatile enough to supply all of the needs you may have as well. So all in all, I think it's a good distro. It's only going to get better. I'm using it as my daily driver. It's been working very, very well. Enjoying my time here on Linux Mint. It's been a while since I've run Mint, and I'm loving every minute of it right now. So, hopefully you guys enjoyed this review from a user's perspective, specifically a power user. And oh, one more thing I'd like to mention. I noticed, especially when screencasting, the default kernel that is included here in Linux Mint, things were a little bit laggy, things were a little bit choppy. So, what I went ahead and did as usual, I installed my own kernel. This time, I installed the Liquorix kernel and tweaked it the way I normally do, slimmed it down. I'm using BFS, I'm using BFQ, I'm using a lot of the other features that Liquorix brings. Since I installed the Liquorix kernel, things are blazing fast, amazingly fast. As far as resources, once again, I mean, I'm doing a screencast right now, which is capturing my screen and encoding it on the fly, as well as I have other applications open and running, and I'm still only using 713 megabytes of memory, and I'm into swap a little bit here, but for very little bit, 668 kilobytes. But I'm using under a gig of memory on a modern day 3D system, okay, that needs 3D acceleration rather, and I'm only using under a gig of CPU power. So I mean that's really, really nice as far as memory usage and resource consumption as far as I'm concerned. So again, that's really nice to see there. All in all, I'm gonna have no problem working on Ubuntu 11.10 in the form of, or in the interpretation of, Linux Mint 12. Okay, so the Ubuntu 11.10 base with Linux Mint 12 on top of it is a winning combination, either as a new user or as a power user. The only thing, again, as a power user, if you're using a lot of CPU intensive tasks, I think you're going to find that the standard kernel, you're going to have a little bit of a choppy desktop, maybe a little bit of a laggy desktop. You may want to consider installing a custom kernel to offer you a lot more speed and be able to put a lot more load on your system without noticing any lag overall. But all in all, I give the desktop high marks. If you customize it the way you like it, which they make it fairly easy to do that, I think it can be almost the perfect desktop as far as I'm concerned. So Linux Mint 12, awesome job. Hopefully you guys like this review. If you like Linux Mint 12, leave a comment below. Tell me what you like about it. Or if you don't like it, tell me what you don't like about it. If there's any tips or tricks that you want to leave in the comments below, please do. I do read through all your comments, so if there's anything that I may have missed in the video or something that you're inquiring about, please feel free to leave me a comment. I'll try to get back to you as best as I can. Follow me on Twitter at @ohheyitslou, and tweet me any questions that you have, or in general, if you just want to chit chat, get a hold of me on Twitter. I'd like to hear from you guys. I appreciate all your support. Thank you for subscribing to my channel. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up, and until next time, guys, we will see you later.